Hello to you all and welcome to my channel. My name is Marlies and today I'm going to show you how to alter the Tim Holtz zigzag folio. This folio can be folded in many different ways, but for today I decided to use it upside down. And then fold the right flap of the folio to the back. Here you will see me covering the base of the folio with some backdrops from the Christmas Ideaology release 2022. The papers that I chose are quite neutral, and that is a perfect base for later on when you want to add some colors to your project. I glue my backdrops down with the Distress Collage medium, and I'm always making sure to rub out all air bubbles. You can do that with a flat hand or maybe with an old cloth. To make this journal a little bit more interesting and give it some extra texture, I chose to add burlap on the other side of the cover of this journal. Because this will be a Christmas journal, I went for the burlap. I think it's a good match with a Christmas theme. Before gluing down the burlap, make sure you have an even nice layer of Distress Collage medium, not too thick and not too thin. Then press down the burlap firmly and make it as flat as possible. Another solution to flatten out the cover is to put it in between some book pages of a very thick and large book, but you could also use a book press to do the same. I want the edges of the burlap to be a little bit more rough and aged, so I am cutting into them in like a zigzag pattern. Besides the rough edges on the burlap, I also want my paper edges to be a little bit distressed, and I'm using the paper distresser to do so. You can start with a gentle swipe along the edges, but you can think about more roughness and using your scissors and tear the pieces of paper a little bit apart. It is personal, but I really love the damaged look on the edges. Then it is time to give it a good rub of brownish ink, and of course you do the edges, but do not forget the folds on the inside and the spine. I am pointing out the edges and the lines that I am going to stitch, and here it's already stitched, and now it is time to make it a little bit more stained. So I am using the distress ink to do so. I put some distress ink on my craft sheet, just spray it with a little bit of water and then swipe or press your papers into it. To create this effect, I am using the Distress Inked Old Paper and also the Ink Vintage Photo. In the spine there will be two eyelets, but I do not want them to be silver, so I am using the Foundry Wax to give them a little pop of color. And do not forget to heat set the Foundry Wax that you just applied. To stain the eyelets just a little bit more, I am using the alcohol pearl ink Smolder, and I'm just letting some drops fall down on it and let it dry. Time to use the big crocodile to punch some holes, and after that to set the eyelets into the paper. The reason that I like this crocodile so much is because it has a long reach. The two eyelets, one on top and one on the bottom, is my base for my binding. This will be a very easy binding because when you use a piece of ribbon, string or elastic and just tie it in the middle of the book, it is easy to slide some journal pages underneath, in and out. Now we are talking about those inner pages, you can see them right here, and I'm going to give them the same staining as I did before on the cover. So I'm using the same colors, old paper and vintage photo, and I'm adding some staining in the same manner I did before. Put it on your craft sheet, spray it with water and swipe or press your papers into it. After that, give the edges a good rub of brownish ink. After inking all the edges, there is another step to consider. If you would like to stitch along the sides, you can do it right now. After preparing this stack of papers, it is time to put it to the side or already put it into the binding that we just created, and then we will go and start with the cover of this Christmas journal. This red door really catched my eye, and I'm going to sand it down a little bit with a sanding block, just to roughen it up a little bit. I love this red door, and it is from the Tim Holtz Baseboards Christmas release this year. To create a really snowy Christmassy effect on the door, I am using the grit paste Snowfall. That is a translucent grit paste. I do not want it to be translucent, so I am adding the white picket fence distress paint to give it a white color. I mixed the grit paste and the paint with a palette knife, and after that I am dipping my fingers into it and just tapping it and smearing it on the top of the door to begin with. If you find it very difficult to place the snow into the right setting, you can think about how the snow will fall down and on which surfaces it will stay the longest. I want to add a little layer of texture on top of the doll, and I am doing so with the Distress Embossing ink and the Frosted Crystal. First I will press the paper doll into the embossing ink, and after that I will sprinkle a layer of Frosted Crystal on top. I always put a sheet of paper or a paper towel underneath so I can catch all the excess Frosted Crystal and put it back into the jar. Do not forget to heat set the Frosted Crystal, because if you don't, it will not stay on top of the paper doll. And this is what the texture looks like up close. I am also going to repeat these steps on this quote. To give the paper doll and the quote a little pop of color, I'm going to use this distress crayon. I just put something onto my craft sheet, wet it a little bit with water, and then use your water brush to fill in a piece that you like, and in this case it is a little bow or scarf on her neck. Let the first layer of crayon dry, and maybe after that you think it can use a little bit more red in there, and then go back in and add another layer. I like the snowfall on the door and on the bottom of the door, but if you are using multiple pieces on your collage, on your cover of the journal, it could be wise to add the snow also to the other pieces. While everything that I covered in the snowfall is drying on the side, I decided to start working on the closure of the cover of the journal. When you buy the zigzag folio, it comes with this binding. It's kind of a fabric binding, and I'm going to use it to close my journal. I want this closure to be matching with the rest of the folio that I already created, and I'm going to stain it in the same colors. I'm using the same steps, just put some ink on your craft sheet, water it down, and then just drag and swipe your binding through it. And I'm using the Distress Ink Old Paper and Vintage Photo to do so. After coloring it with the ink and water, the binding is quite damped, so just put it to the side to dry, and if that is not fast enough for you, just use your heat tool to dry it. I got out some linen tape, but the width is too wide for the binding because I want it on top of it, so just grab some scissors and cut it down into the right size. This is what we have so far, the binding and on top the linen tape, but I thought it needed something extra just to give it a bit of texture and extra layering, and I came up with this piece of lace that goes underneath. And of course, not to forget, I did some stitching along the sides and also a zigzag stitch. Now that the binding is done, I have to figure out a way on how to attach it to the front or how to close the journal. And I came up with attaching it later on to the back of this red door. But before attaching the binding to the red door, to the back of the red door, I have to make sure that my whole scenery for the front of the cover of this journal is ready to go. Now let's decorate, and starting with the red door and some pine twine that I cut into the right size that will go around all sides of the door. In the meantime, all my pieces for the front of this journal are dry, so let's assemble them all together. To place my pieces on the cover, I am using some different kinds of tapes, one a little bit thicker than the other, so you can create different heights. After assembling all the pieces for the cover, I was missing something, so I went back to my Christmas stash and found these beautiful mirrored stars from Tim Holtz and just apply them a bit randomly on the red door. Before gluing down the whole scenery to the front of the journal, I want to decorate the background a little bit because I used neutral colors. There is not much there, not much of a pop of color. So I am using the collage tiles to add some color to the background. For glue, I am using the Distress Collage medium because I love the narrow nozzle on it, so you can divide your glue very even. After that, I am also looking for other ways to decorate the background, just little pieces that will see through after adding the red door. And the design tape from Christmas design tape is brilliant to do so, because you do not have to use it in whole, but you can tear it into the pieces and into the size that you prefer. Right now you will see me put in this ephemera loose, but in the end I decided to glue it down. Time to glue the scenery to the cover of the journal, and I am using bookbinder's glue because it's just firm and it will grab very tight, and that is what I need for this kind of heavy, little bit heavy scenery. I have put the cover to the side to dry, and now it is time to make some plans for the back of the journal. For now we have a cover and we have a middle section with some art journal pages which you can embellish or decorate yourself. That part will be a slide in and out with an elastic band. And for the back of the journal I created these 4 pockets. In the end it turned out to be 5, and I am going to create an accordion folder with it. Before attaching all these pockets together, I am going to make it a little bit more aged, and I'm using the vintage distress ink to do so. In the meantime, I have stitched along all sides of these pockets, and I also grabbed some journal cards. This is the medium-sized journal cards, and it will be a perfect hinge between the pockets just to adhere them together. When you have the desired amount of pockets glued together with the hinge made with the journal cards, it is time to glue it into the journal. I chose to do this in the back of the journal, the burlap side, and I'm also using the bookbinder's glue to do that. I find it a little bit more firm, and I really wanted to hold well. So I am spreading out an even layer of the bookbinding glue and attaching it first to one side of the journal. Make sure this stack of pockets is in the right place. Give it a good press down and attach the clips to hold it in place and let it dry. Once the first side is dry, it is time to go to the next side, and I'm going to repeat the same steps. Just give it an even layer of bookbinding glue, place it in the right position, and just hold it down into place or put some clips on it and let it dry. In the end, the accordion folio will look like this, and you have more than enough room and space to store your ephemera. For example, you could store some journal cards, maybe some labels or some tags. I made these cute little things and I will make a video about that later, so stay tuned. This video is almost over, so I would like to ask you, if you like my content, please like, subscribe or comment down below. I really appreciate it. There is also a possibility to support my content, and that can be done via Patreon or Ko-fi. I will put the link in the description box below.